Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome.
Recording in progress.
I'm State Senator Spiros Manzavinos, and I am the co-chair of the Aging in Place Working Group. Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We have a very dynamic group that has been convened to address, in my mind, and I think many people's minds, to examine and elevate policies to support aging in place. So before we get onto the agenda, I'd like to just offer a couple opening remarks as we get going. I introduced this resolution. It was actually my first piece of legislation since I was elected. To look at, like I said, and examine and elevate policies that support aging in place. And how I got there was, when I first was elected, was during the pandemic. And I think we learned a lot during the pandemic and then shut down. But one of the things that I realized was that one group that was particularly hard hit by the pandemic was our senior community. And obviously the demographic data, even before the pandemic, was showing that we are aging as a state, and it's certainly the case today. And we learned a lot. And what I started to do was do more research about elder care and how we are dealing with caring for this very important part of our population, and realized it was a very broad topic. And so I wanted to find a little piece of it that we can make a difference and start to move the ball, move the needle on. And doing the research and talk to many folks who are on this call and who are not on the call, looking at aging in place was, I think, a key place to start. So really the intent of this is to, examine and find opportunities to improve upon the state's network to support and protect our aging population. And one of the other things I realized too is that, we need to support our caregivers, because supporting caregivers who are caring for older aging, those who are aging, is important, because it's, they need the support, but it's also, we need to support them as they're going back to their job sites or working from home. I do believe that, throughout the state, we're going to start to see more multi-generational households that are comprised of adults who are not only raising children or have grown children, but are now actively caring for a parent or an older loved one. And I think we want to see people, stay in their home as they age. I mean, and that's pretty much why this working group was formed. We want to ensure that we address in a culturally appropriate manner what I'll call the social determinants of aging well and with dignity: housing, accessibility, transportation, nutrition, safety, employment, combating social isolation. So the way to do that is to make sure that there's a statewide network that's prepared, that's enabled, that's resourced, that is forward thinking. And that's why the intent, my intent in forming this working group. And I really appreciate everyone who has helped educate me on this issue, and I thank everyone who's agreed to participate in this working group. I would like to welcome my co-chair on this in this endeavor, Representative Krista Griffith, and let her offer a few remarks before we move into introducing themselves that's on the task force. So, Representative Griffith.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator Manzavinos. And first off, thank you very much for asking me to co-chair this extremely important endeavor with you. I echo all of your articulate and eloquent statements about the need for this working group. And I also want to add that I believe what we will see from this group are a number of issues that we will progress on. One, we will be making connections with one another that will make it easier to solve some of those small-term or short-term problems. We will, by the relationships that we will develop in the next several months, we will be making connections with different organizations to really get at the root of some deeper issues, but also maybe solve some problems that might be easier to accomplish. And I also think we'll be diving into issues that may prompt legislation, differences in funding, other ways to be innovative in how we treat our aging population and how we encourage those individuals to stay in place. And like Senator Manzavinos said, I'm deeply concerned about our caregivers. So many of them are teetering on brink of collapse often. you know, they are juggling a job, they're juggling taking care of a parent, their own children, other issues. And so it's just, or if they're a spouse of someone's aging, their chances are they're aging themselves. What happens when that caretaker who's also aging falls ill? And then, you know, and then now you have two individuals who are facing having to move out of their home that they've invested so much time and energy to. So I'm very excited about our connections and the relationships that we're going to be developing on this group, as well as the deep progress that we'll be making. So I'm just very excited. We have a stellar group of individuals who'll be contributing to this, who have deep history in our state. And I just really look forward to seeing our final product and the product that we develop along the way. So thank you very much for asking me to be co-chair with you, Senator, and I'm very excited about our group.
Thank you, Representative Griffith. I'm just going to call on folks as I see them on my screen. If you could just introduce yourselves, share where you're from, and share any thoughts you might have, briefly about the working group. So I'm going to start with my Senate colleague, Senator Bonini.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I'm looking at all these wonderful participants, and I'm sorry that I bring the average down. And I saw Ed Ratlidge. He'll agree with that. But I'm very excited. And Representative, you did a great job of summarizing. I'm excited to help. And by the way, everybody, I'm Colin Bonini, represent the 16th district, and these are really incredibly important issues, and I'm glad we're working on it. Thanks, Gross.
And the 16th district covers what area? Just so.
The best part of Delaware, Lower Kent County. Come on. Thank you. Thank you.
Representative Ruth Briggs King, your thoughts on that?
Thank you. Well, I'm not certain he has the best district, but it's truly a pleasure to be engaging on this issue, because I think there's one thing that we can all agree on, is that we're aging. We're older today than we were yesterday, and that most of us would probably also like to be able to age gracefully in place where we are. I was one of those people that Representative Griffith mentioned. I was a sandwich between finishing raising my own children and with my mother, who had a lot of illnesses, but the real challenge was Alzheimer's for the last 9 years of her life. And I'm actually meeting with you today from where we had added to our home and made a suite that was just, for her to age in place with us. I represent a community that is growing, and it's one of the largest growing communities in the state of Delaware, between Georgetown, Millsboro, that has a lot of in-migration, with people coming to us from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Northern Virginia to age in place. And I think that what this group is going to do is really look at a multifaceted approach. There are so many different moving parts to this aging in place. And Krista, you did a wonderful job mentioning many of them. But I'm going to say that the issues and challenges we're going to face crosses socioeconomics, it crosses gender, it crosses race. And so we're going to have a big focus on how to help people age in place, make sure the money follows the person. We talk about that in education and other social services. And I think we've been a little lax in ensuring that money follows the person, whether they have a disability as they age, special need, because they're all going to be there at some point. And so I'm looking very, very much forward to this discussion, and hopefully a plan of action that we can lay down for Delaware for the future.
Thank you. Melissa.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Melissa Smith. I'm the director of the State Division of Services for Aging and Adults with Physical Disabilities. And I'm thrilled to be here with colleagues who share my mission to see Delaware's aging population do so with dignity, respect, and live healthy, vibrant lives in the community. And so I'm thrilled to be here and excited for the work ahead.
Thank you. Brenda. Brenda? Okay, we'll come back to Brenda. Alfred? Am I on mute? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just wasn't sure. I
think they're having trouble
Alfred.
unmuting themselves, maybe.
Okay. We'll go for Alfred.
Oh, yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Wendell Alford. I live in Lewis, and I'm representing AARP for the state of Delaware. And I'm very excited about being a part of this, working with distinguished people like yourselves. Personally, my parents passed several years ago, but I am the caregiver and have been the caregiver for a partner. And I also have been working with Camp Rehoboth over the last couple of years, which is Mrs. King brought into focus there, the population of Sussex County, but also the young people that used to be in Rehoboth are now much older people, and they're very concerned about what we're doing today. So I'm happy to be part of that, to represent this part of the state and to represent AARP. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Katie?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Katie Macklin. I work for the Alzheimer's Association, and I'm really honored and excited to be a part of this group because certainly home and community-based services occupy a growing portion of the care continuum for people who are living with Alzheimer's and other dementias. And because of the specific symptoms of the disease, certainly Alzheimer's and dementia creates unique care needs and challenges. And increasing access to home and community-based services will certainly improve the quality of life for Delawareans who are affected by dementia, while also reducing costs for state government, reducing financial and emotional burden on families. And I did want to mention, Chairman, I'm so glad that you brought up caregivers, because home and community-based services certainly not only allow Delawareans with dementia to remain in their homes, but also provide family caregivers with much needed support. These services certainly empower caregivers to provide quality care for their loved ones, while also giving them an opportunity to manage their own and improve their own health. And I also just wanted to mention too, something that we're seeing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Certainly this is furthering many's desire, many within our state, their desire to age in place. With long-term care communities hit the hardest by this pandemic, there certainly has been a high interest in receiving care at home. So I think that we're going to continue to see an increased demand for home and community-based services. So thank you. And again, I'm just really honored to be a part of this group.
Thank you, Katie. Amy? And you're muted. Amy, you're still muted. Can we unmute Amy?
Senator, I wonder if you were to unmute her on the, if you click on participants and go to her microphone.
Ask to unmute. So if you can just say yes when we press that button. Is anything popping up? You can give a thumbs up, Amy, or a thumbs down.
Uh-oh.
Ask to unmute.
Okay. Well, let's try that again. Let's go to Jean. And we'll figure out what's up with Amy. So Jean?
That sounded like a song. What's up with Amy? I'm Jean
As long as I get the rights. Oh,
royalties. Maybe we can fund more home care. So I'm Jean Mullen. I am the executive director of the Delaware Association for Home and Community Care. We represent about 65, 66 licenses here in the state, which would include hospice, skilled home care, aid-only home care, and personal service assistance agencies. So I'm to use this word that's been used over and over again. I'm excited that we're even having these discussions to collaborate on, the treasure that we have of older citizens and to do something of value for them to make this easier or more likely that they can age in place. So also, the mention of workforce and caregivers, and because I'm not actually, in an agency myself, I want to say that we really need to look at those caregivers as well as the entities that are supporting them. Some do better job than others, but we need to look, they're all wearing down, whether it's administration in a hospital or the caregivers in a hospital or the administration of an agency or a dialysis unit, and the caregivers. So COVID has brought to our attention, of course, shortages that were already predicted. I do remember, I believe he was the director of the Office of Aging, Alan Zabak, at one time, came back from Washington, the National Office of Aging, and gave us a report about 20 years ago of what we could expect to happen. And it's here, it's been here, and now we're coping and grappling with it. So if somebody can make something happen, this group likely can. So thank you very much for putting it together, Senator.
Thank you so much. Amy, can we let's try Amy again. See if we can get the, no? Anything?
Perhaps we can have Amy, I'm sorry to do this, maybe Amy can put her introductory remarks in the chat. I don't know,
Yeah,
but I don't see it, but I actually don't see a chat.
We don't have chats for official meetings, but I'm going to call Amy right now. I have a cell phone number listed. So Amy, if you could just answer your cell number, I'll call and we can try to troubleshoot.
There we go.
Awesome. That's okay. So we'll go to Lisa. Lisa? Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to leave the troubleshooting in Taylor's very capable hands. Taylor's on the Senate staff. I also want to make sure we introduce, everyone sees William. Why don't you just put your camera on for a second? William, you received information from him, just so you can see what he looks like. He is going to be staffing this working group. Ed Ratlidge will be, I'm going to introduce him in a moment, who is going to do a presentation. But I also just want to add, there are still additional members of the task force who have yet to be named by the governor's office. So we are awaiting those names. So this is not the full group just yet. There's probably, I believe, about 4 or 5 more additional folks that hopefully once the appointment process is completed, they will be able to join us at our next meeting. So I just wanted to put that out there. And I also want to share, and again, welcome everyone who is watching. At the end, there will be an opportunity for the public to comment. So I do thank you all for joining today and watching as well. So I'd like to introduce, I'm going to move up, switch an item on the agenda here, and I'd like to start with a presentation of demographic data by Ed Ratlidge from the University of Delaware, the Center for Applied Demography. And I think it's going to be really helpful to sort of set the stage for us to fully understand the full dimensions of this from a demographic point of view. So thank you, Ed, for being with us and for all the great work your center has done, continues to do, and will continue to do at the university and helping those of us who are making policy decisions. So thank you.
How about now?
Yes,
Okay.
we have you now.
Okay. Will, are you you're going to be managing the button here?
Yes, it will be.
Okay. All right. First of all, thank you for calling here. Of course, we're very interested in everything that has to do with the changing demography of the state, and it is changing for a whole series of reasons. I picked out a number of things that I thought might be useful for you to understand what the magnitude of some of these issues. And there's basically your document that describes what you're supposed to do is wide reaching. And the first thing you're probably going to have to be doing is to kind of narrow down what you think are the priorities of those things if you're going to be dealing with the data. This will be done most of what I'm going to discuss is mostly at the state and to some extent the county levels. But data does exist going much further down into the state. If there's sub areas of interest to you, like rep districts or senatorial districts, even at sometimes. But it's also the deeper that you go into the state, the less access we have to certain information simply for privacy purposes. So let's get rolling on this. Will. I pull this up just for the sake of it. And one thing I thought it was interesting. This is coming out of the Centers for Disease Control, and the ability to live in one's own home and community safely, independently, and comfortably, regardless of age, income, or ability level. And I just thought it was kind of an interesting. It's a starting point, and I know you are going to be approaching your own definition in there. And I'm sure that you'll have other variations on that, because you're going to have to narrow this thing down when you start talking about policies and costs and those sorts of issues. Let's start with the next one, Will. Okay, I want to just to give you an idea of how the state is growing or not. And as you'll notice, that coming up here from 1790. It is starting to look a little flat at the top as we move to 2050, because we're not growing as fast for a variety of reasons. You can also see down to Sussex County at the has launched itself over the last 15 years and continues to grow, but it's flattening out, has the same kind of pattern. And Kent County is still growing, but is flatter than they were during the housing boom. And of course, Newcastle, the largest of the bunch, is flattening to some degree, although the census has given us a little bit of room to rethink that. We don't know why, but that's a kind of an inside thing, which we'll deal with later in terms of the data that's coming out. And that's we've had a full look at the redistricting data. And that's going to be a very interesting process for you all as well. I don't know whether any of that is surfaced at this point or not. Next slide. What we try to do is to take this will kind of show you that the structure of the population is also changing to some degree. At the if you look at the blue line, that's the annual growth, and you can see we peaked at about 14,000 additional people in just before 2005. And that is now dropped down to 6,000. That so we had a big peak in roughly 2004 July, and we're now at a much slower place. The other one I want you to look at is the red line. The red line is what we call natural increase, births minus deaths, and you can see what's happening there. Really, we hit a peak much farther back in time. But it's been since 2005, it's steadily slowing down. So when we were receiving 5,000, increasing by 5,000 people in 2005, we're now increasing about 1,000 a year. And that is going to continue back to the point where it becomes negative. In other words, more deaths than births in the state. And so what's the growing piece? The growing piece is net migration. People from all over the place that move in here, primarily to Sussex County, generally around 5,000 a year. I'll show you a little bit more of that later on. And so now what you're dealing is with the backgrounds of people primarily from Maryland, DC, Northern Virginia, and then Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. And they bring new ideas for the way things should be. And in that fact, will change Delaware a little bit. Maybe for the good, maybe not. I don't know. I've been here for an awful long time. I moved here from Alabama in 2000. Let's see, what would have been 1943. So I am also aging in place, and have been so for about 15 years at this point. Next slide. All right, you see the difference in those two, and that's the point. To this problem is a different problem for each individual county, and you have to keep that in mind. Kent County has kind of slowed down there, and then we had, I think Route 1 opening up had something to do with it, but also the fact that southern Newcastle County maybe was getting a little crowded, and so they just jumped over to the Smyrna area, and Smyrna has grown quite nicely. As we're looking at the latest population stuff for Smyrna the other day, and it's moved quite a bit in the last 10 years. So you see that going up. There's a peak at 2005, once again during the housing boom and bust, and you can see that downward slope. However, in the red has moved from about a little over 1,000 net increase from natural increase, now down below 500. And you'll see that the major force in the migration was migration, as it was for the state overall. And a lot of it comes out of New Jersey in particular, trying to avoid the property taxes and the income taxes. And I don't know whether there's going to be another role of that or not, or maybe they're all going to Florida and Texas. So, but that's a different pattern. They've moved back to their normal behavior now, growing something around 2,000 people a year. And then Newcastle County, you can look at the charts, and they're falling from the left to the right. The total number added each year is at one time was 7,000 in the 1990s, and it's now down to about 1,000. You'll see that the migration numbers have gone significantly. It's not there. Well, they are negative to some degree. More people moving out than moving in, and you have to be careful about that, because you have a good piece of these people in Sussex County are from Newcastle County, so they retire down to their beach home from Newcastle, and then they'll show in Sussex County's population from that point on. But you can also see that red line at the bottom, which used to be in the 3,000 net a year from natural increase, is now under just above 1,000. And finally, to Sussex, another different chart. You'll see the significant numbers up to about 5,000 a year going back, and all the peaks are in that area. So they got a much more stable, well, it's not stable, but it does wander around a bit. And you'll look at the burst down there, and you'll see that the latest natural increase numbers are a negative 500. And that's it will continue to look like that and decline even further, mainly because the population that does move in is a wee bit older than the typical migration, which is normally concentrated in the upper 20, middle to upper 20s and 30s. That's a different thing. And you can also look, if you look furthest to the right, you will see the green line is actually above the total line, which means Sussex County does not grow unless they've got migration into it. So it's a very different kind of issue, but it also says that the way that you're changing the population in Sussex County is significant every year, and that doesn't say anything about the quality of your in-migrants or anything. It just says it's different people from different places, and they're not native Delawareans. So we only have about, I think, last calculation, 48% of the people are native Delawareans, and that number is dropping. Okay, next chart. Okay, I put this up for, and I need to change this one, not because it's wrong or anything of that sort. You know, look at this is 1960. And you look, this is to the left, you find the male population, and you'll see in 5-year increments, you'll see the number of people. For example, at the bottom, you'll see the 0 to 4 age group, and it's about 28,000 boys, and roughly the same numbers on the gal side for the 0 to 4. And as you climb up the ladder, you see the population decreases for both of them, obviously because they're aging in place, I guess. And what the other side of this thing, if you look at the first 3 rows of that, are the baby boomers coming away, and that those baby boomers are going to move through the entire population up to where we're dealing with them today in the ages of 57 to 72. And so it's had a big impact on over the years on everything from construction of roads, construction of highways, construction of buildings, everything else. The boomers have been driving it. So and they're now driving it in the aging in place crowd as well. If I don't have the underneath of that, if I had had one more year made to 1964, I would have had a bar which went all the way across to 30,000 on each side of them. So those 4 bars at the bottom are really the baby boomers. Next slide. This is what we look like in 2018. Somebody said that doesn't look like, looks like more of a beer can rather than a pyramid anymore. And you'll see that basically it's slope of the younger groups are smaller, and that has to do with the fertility rates that are there. That's the Gen Zs that is primarily at those first bottom four rows. They're slightly smaller from each one. Then you can see the millennials at the really between 20 and 24, 25, 29, and those start pushing up until you get down up to the 40, 44, and that's where we have the baby bust. And then at 55 to 59, you will see it's these large bars again, where you can see those 4 bars. That's the baby boomers that are they're going to be rolling down there, and that's they're the ones that are basically probably the wealthiest group that's ever gone through Delaware. They're also there's also a big part of the labor force at the beginning, and then over time they'll be dropping off, and you'll hear all these discussions about why is there labor shortages now? Well, these people they're retiring every day from the at 65, and I'll show you another slide what that amounts to when there. So this is kind of what we're facing here, and it'll show a little bit differently in the once we get the final data from the 2000 census, which we don't have yet. I'm not expecting the real age data basically is supposed to come out in maybe March or April but we don't have that right now. All we have is the redistricting data. Next chart, next chart. Okay, so there you can see what it looks like at 2050. And these, so you can see that the those at the top, the boomers have gone for another. They're up there at the very top, and what you can see is those numbers, the actual numbers in the 85 plus are growing enormously, and that has that's driving the demands on the healthcare labor force. It's a problem for the hospitals. It's a very, very different problem than what you're talking about building roads and homes and everything else at that point. Just large numbers up at that population from really 60 to 64 and up. So at that point in time, so it's this aging in place is going to get even bigger over time. And if you look at the bottom, at that point, you will see that slope in the bottom of the younger people continues to be smaller and smaller as fertility rates in particular have increased. And I looked at the number of people, for example, I'd forgotten who it was, that had come into Sussex County since 1985 is absolutely enormous, the total numbers. Even subtracting out the deaths and so forth. And so there were just an awful lot of older people. And I think the average age in Rehoboth, just the full-time population was in the 90s. So you have very interesting times that's facing the state. Next chart. households, as opposed to what it's is flattening out. In other words, it's this is will affect.
Hey, Ed,
Yes.
Ed, I apologize to interrupt. You said the average age is in the 90s? Did I hear that
For
right?
the city of Rehoboth.
90s?
Yes, for the people who live there full time. There's only about 900 of them.
Wow. Thank you.
Yes. You're being nosy, Senator.
Sorry to interrupt. No, it's just, I'm
You
sorry.
want to get their names?
No, I
Get
just,
sent
it
to
just,
you?
you know, when you hear average age of 90 in a community, that, you know, that's, I mean, is that just, sorry to interrupt. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, it is. It's been there for quite a time, and it's a very expensive place to live in that. But that's what I'm basically seeing on there. So I'll drag up some numbers for and send them to you. Next chart. This is a projected labor force. We seem to be stuck at about 488,000 right now. We came out of the downturn from the greatest recession, I think it was called, but it's the labor force is not increasing at any rate at all at this point, and that's true throughout the country in most places, except for those where you've got migration, positive migration in to say Rehoboth, Florida and Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, places and out of California, New York, and the Northeast in particular. So it's meaning we've got just a stable labor force. It's hard to grow tax revenues under a stable labor force. I'll tell you that too. That's it's a very interesting issue. Next chart. I wanted to also indicate, and some of these charts will show you out there at the 2020 how these charts moved when we had the lockdown, and so you're showing on top the labor force participation rate, which you'll hear mentioned many times in the things, and you'll see that has been from 2000 to has dropped from 70% down to really about 62% in the of the labor force is participating, and the number below that is employed relative to the population, and you'll see how that has been dropping, and you'll see that the also that we've had some recovery, but not the full way back on that. It's basically saying that we're adding a lot of population, but we're not adding a lot of workers to the population too. And that has all sorts of ramifications down the line. Next. Now, this is one of the things I like to show to demonstrate with what happens with labor force participation by age. And you can see it's kind of a buildup at the 19 to 34 area as the millennials were joining us. 35 to 49, where most everybody is up to 70% participation rates, even as high as 77. And you've gotten the 50 to 64 age group. You say that they're in the 58. So we've started to slow down at all from 35 to 49 into the 50 to 64. You're losing employment there. And then you got the jump off the cliff from the 50 to 64 crowd becoming 65 plus, and you only have 10% of those people that are even working. Well, think about that in terms of the size of the baby boomers that are there now, as they're going to go over that. They were halfway over it now, but so we continue to lose there, and it's hard to make that up. Is everybody depressed, or are you just okay? Next slide. The other thing that happens here through the aging process, over on the left, you see hundreds of up to $100,000 of the consumer income, and you can see it peaks at about age 45 in the 45 to 54 group, probably closer to the 54 than the 45. And then you'll start to see that those incomes are cut in half basically by the time you get to 65. And that's part of that is because of part-time work, the type of jobs that's being done, but that's people are retiring, and those that have retired early and have jumped out of that 55 to 64 group that I just showed you a minute ago. And you can also see the wage and salary number. Hopefully you can see it, which is the yellow bar is also dropping as you get that. And what this is basically saying is, and that's only at the 65 and over is what I've got basically there, that those numbers go down. And this, what this talks about then is the challenges to this, the aging in place crowd that is not working, that doesn't have sufficient retirement income to be able to afford to assist themselves. That's where they get into, hopefully with their families and so forth, they can make it through. So you have to understand that these things are moving continuously, and the more people that you get in these upper age groups, and I'll show you in a minute what that looks like in the longer term, then the more the upper end of this distribution changes, and it represents more people and more problems for income within that particular group. Along with that, you've got the issues like we've got 160,000 people now on Medicare, and Medicare doesn't pay for all the healthcare expenses that are for that age group. And there's depending upon what they do, there's Congress has got to resolve how they're going to pay for that in about another 3 years, because it's running out of money as the numbers of people who are in this age group come in and start drawing that down. Not a good thing. Next chart. So in looking at these things, and you can look at these. One of the comments I found, you should go to www.nia.nih.gov and look at the aging in place work there. It's very good and very thoughtful, and it's easy to read. And I would suggest they will go through a number of issues, but these are the main issues that they talk about. Transportation. We know we got special transportation to a degree because of the General Assembly funds it. Finding activities and friends is another particular issue. That's your senior center kind of activity, but certainly others. Safety gets to the police and the and in particular in that and being safe in the home. Housing concerns. The way that I see this is, are you dealing with homeowners, or are you dealing with the entire population? And that's a real question. Getting help during the day, personal care, household chores, meals, money management, and healthcare just in general. And you quickly through those, and you can think of things that would be done maybe by a relative if you're unable to deal with that. Others that you can certainly hire people. And the one thing that helps if you're aging in place, if you've already got a job, you probably ought to hold on to it, because it's unless you've got the ability to support yourself through that. And in most cases, Social Security is going to be a problem for you at that point. So that's a big laundry list of things that would different people from, say, different income levels within that group, and there is quite a wide variation. And it's hard to see how you plan for that. I think that's the next chapter. Next. Okay, you can see here, this is 2000 to 2050. We're sitting right now at the 65 plus group, which is the first row, 186,690 Delawareans. In 2050, that is going to be 260,414. And so it's been increasing quite significantly from 103,000 into the year 2000. So it's you know, it's could almost triple during that period of time. And it's all Sussex County's fault. So we need to stop. We need to attract younger people. And if you look at that, we've got 2020, you got 234,000 in the 0 to 19 group, 234,214 in the 0 to 19 group, which is going to be your next labor force. And in 2050, you only have 239,786. And that's the problem with that, the shape of that bottom part of the pyramid that I was showing you, where it was kind of in a decreasing as you were going down the line. So that's nothing you could do about that at this age. The dies are already cast in that issue. Keep people in school is one thing, and make sure that they're really labor force eligible as they graduate from schools is probably the best thing anybody can do for that particular population. But that's what your problem is. Next. These were the things that I could, in reading this stuff, but I can see they're very important healthcare concerns, income level, disabilities, housing concerns, living arrangements is very, very important. We have a segment in the population, which is they're retired and they're childless. In other words, there's nobody else there taking care from them unless it's a sibling or perhaps if their parents are still around, but that's probably an uncertain source. Very important to know, we get a very large number of the seniors who are living alone. And I can give you numbers of that on those particular issues. The potential for family support depends upon what the household looks like that they're living in. Once again, the 65 plus and what it looks like. And then you kind of say, well, what government programs are around, whether they're state, local level, whether they're nonprofit or whatever, are there to deal with some of these particular issues. So it's a matching up the funding and the this sort of for the needs which are basically out there in this particular population. And next slide. I wanted to show you also basically what healthcare and hospitals and so forth. The blue line is the boys, the red line is the gals. And what this shows you is the probability that you're going to be in the hospital on a given day, depending upon what your age. And you'll see at 85 plus, about 40% of the females are going to visit the hospital in a year. It's up to 45% in a year for the people who are for men that are in 85 plus. When you look down at the bottom, if you were 15 to 19, 20, 24, at least for the boys, it was like I don't know, 0.2% we're going to be there. So this is climbing, and because of age, and you can do nothing to do about that except for try to get people entering in this age group as mobile and as healthy as you possibly can. Because if you don't, then the healthcare system is basically going to be overwhelmed. I should also next slide, and I'm almost done. This is looking at a couple of sectors, and you've got the blue in the finance sector. The construction sector is in the red. You've got manufacturing in the green, and then you've got the one at the top. That's healthcare, which is taking a larger and larger, getting larger and larger. From the 2000, there were 40,000 people working in that sector. There are now 70,000 people working in that sector in all sorts of occupations. And the problem that gives you, when you look at the number of people that are essentially retiring, think about the number of physicians in there that are going to be retiring as well. And the numbers that we get on this, on our physician survey, it's not, it comes out of the University of Delaware, show only about 40% of the physicians expect to be working in 5 years. And we just finished a survey on the the advanced practice nursing population and physicians assistants, and half of them are over 50. And they're facing the same thing, that basically over a period of the next 5 years, that about 40% of those are not going to be working. So what you've got a problem with is that younger age group that you got, and having enough people in those areas to attract them. The worst part of it is the entire Northeast is going to be in that problem. So everybody's going to try to attract those people into their states to take those things, to take those positions. And the only other thing is you can basically start trying to work through the schools and get people to be interested in those kind of professions back when they were, from the 6th grade up. It's going to be very, very important when you look at some of these areas, which are going to be very, very hard hit. So that's, I think, is that the last, William? Yes. Usually when I go through one of these, I basically have, most of the people are feeling very despondent when I get done. And this is I specialize in doing that, because I can show you worse stories in this, which are going to happen in certain professions or whatever. So, and I've got about 600 different slides on this that I've done that I do for different groups. But this is one is very, very important as far as I'm concerned, mainly because I am aging in place.
Well, Ed, thank you so much. That was, I'll use the word informative. I won't add any more descriptors to it. I mean, I think that was very informative. And I think it really helps to kind of set the stage for the work ahead, of this working group. And I think what we're facing here in the state. So I just got a couple questions and I'm gonna open it up. But before I do, I just want to, since we had some technical difficulties before, I want to give Amy an opportunity to introduce herself. So Amy, if you could do that.
Thanks. I'm back. I don't know why I couldn't get on, but thank you. Happy Friday to everybody. I'm Amy Milligan. I'm the executive director of St. Francis Life, which is a PACE program. PACE stands for Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. The goal is to keep the elderly living in their home with their family, their people, and their stuff till the end of their life, if we're able to do that. So our program supports all those services in which we try to keep them safe. We just opened a second site down in Newark. So we have 2 sites. We currently support 259 participants, and the goal is to get to 500. And very excited to be part of this group because, as the numbers just showed, it is going to continue to be a large part of our population. I'm also here representing the Delaware Healthcare Association, and I'm thankful to be able to do that and looking forward to work on new ways to help this population, like everybody has said that we will be one day.
Thank you, Amy. Lisa, I think we got your technical difficulties addressed as well.
Yes, I was in good company with my friend Amy. So good afternoon. Really excited to be here. My name is Lisa Zimmerman, and I'm the Medicaid Deputy Director, and have really dedicated pretty much the last 32 years of my service to the state of Delaware to serving this exact population. So it is certainly something that I am passionate about. I've worked very closely with my friends and colleagues, Melissa and Amy and Jean, on many, many things. And so I'm just really excited to be here and to figure out how we can do a better job and take care of the folks that are just critically important to all of us. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Did we get Brenda? Did we get your technical difficulties addressed, Brenda?
Brenda was not able to resolve her difficulties, but she is listening.
Okay, well then, thank you. I just wanted to give them an opportunity. And let me just ask a couple questions. I mean, again, that was really informative. And I think it really presented a unique picture of the landscape that we're facing. Is it too early to identify any trends as a result of the pandemic? I mean, I think, I've read a lot about population shifts, sort of shifts in the workforce where, perhaps people are going to be able to work from home more. I mean, are you starting to see any of that? And does that factor into any of the data that or that you just presented? Kind of, or your thoughts about that going forward? Was it too early?
No, it's not too early. I mean, we've been tracking a lot of the labor force related kinds of things, whether it's sectors or whatever. For example, the restaurant hotel business, they took a 50% reduction in their basically their output, if you will, and have only recovered a portion of that sort of thing. So those sectors are still kind of hanging in there. The other thing that happens, and this is just kind of the economic side of this thing, is that owners of businesses that have made it through have found different ways to operate, and a lot of it is looking at reducing employment, not increasing it, and using more technology to do their work. I think there's going to be there's all sorts of arguments within the business community about remote working, and there are some things that can be done very effectively and can be monitored effectively, and they're going to many of them are going to start to get back to work. The big operations like in New York and Philadelphia and so forth are going to try to get their people back to there, because they feel like their culture is a problem, and it's really is a problem if you hire new people and they don't know any of the people that are in your business.
Sure.
It's a major issue. So those sorts of issues will be resolved, but it will not be within a year or two. It'll be over the next 10, 15 years. One of the things though is that you see every month the number of jobs that are open that have come out of what we call the JOLTS report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and right now that number is at 11 million. And the trouble is the mismatch between the skills of the people that are not working and the new jobs which are coming up, where there's plenty of jobs for coders, they can't get them for writing, for working at software and so forth. There are problems in the construction business. We've got a lot of problems which are going to last for a while with shortages and so forth. I mean, you see all the stories about the container ships that are tied up at the docks and you can't get anything. You can't buy a car now without waiting 6 months, the car you want. And you have a lot of different kinds of things that are taking place there. So we know pretty much we can follow this data fairly closely in Delaware, and keep you apprised of that as we look at it on a monthly basis if you want.
Yeah. Do you think it'll affect migration though? I mean, because are people looking to retire early or move? If they can work from anywhere, they're going to be like, well, heck, I don't want to commute into the city anymore, or I don't want to do this commute. I want to move to the beach, or I want to move closer to family in a different part of the country. I mean, do you see that as a potentially impacting, our state's numbers? And again, as we kind of get to, let's say maybe the 55-year-olds who are like, look, I see retirement in the near future. I'm able to work for a certain period of time from home, and just sort of get a jump on that migration rather than at age 65 or something.
Well, you have a number of different issues that come up. Then there's a lot of people that have retired that would like to work, but it is to get out of home, get out of the house, and go work at McDonald's or anything to get out of the house. And so remoting doesn't help that group at all.
Right.
And we've seen a little bit of uptick of in the number of 65 plus that are working. And it's not just me, but I think you should see that. And, if they would get down there and increase the retirement age from 66 or whatever is to 76, that would help people stay working a lot longer. But that's people are finding that they simply don't have enough money when they retire, and it's hard to get back into the labor force unless you have an occupation which is in demand. Right. And there's
one last question. And again, did you have any data that sort of showed the distribution by county of folks 65 and older?
Oh yeah.
Did you have that? I'm just trying to remember.
I don't have that here, but
I mean,
it's
I just,
available.
yeah, I guess I just want to make sure I'm understanding, and I completely understand, the point about Sussex, but I mean, I'm going to speak for, the area I represent, Ellesmere and Newport, that surrounding area, certainly has a population that is approaching that, and again, having some unique needs, perhaps, if somebody, lived in a house for 40 years, in those neighborhoods, again, they're in that age group, but I also recognize again what the challenges that are facing Sussex County. I just like to get a sense of what those projections are by county as well, because I think
I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you, Representative Griffith.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much for that tremendous presentation. It was very eye-opening for me. One of the questions I have is, and I think when we're looking at that 2005 data, it's so shocking in a way. You look at those earlier slides where you see that tremendous peak around the year 2005, and in some ways I think, oh, 2005 wasn't that long ago. It was the year I got married, blah, blah, but it's actually, that was 16 years ago. What factors led to that explosion? And are any of those, do you see, or can you determine if any of those, looking in the next 5 years, are we going to see another one of those peaks? Are you seeing anything that led up to that 05 burst? Are we seeing the groundwork for that being laid at all right now for another one of those peaks, say in the next 4 to 10 years?
Well, it's possibly it may be in place right now. We've seen what's happened to housing prices. They've been bid up considerably. The problem, but the state part of it is the aging in place population are not getting out of their houses and putting them up on their market for sale and going living in a neighbor, some sort of facility and selling their house. So by encouraging people to stay where they are, it'll increase the price levels. But that's one part. You also have a migration from the urban to the suburban part, which is causing shortages. There's also the problem of lumber, which is like quadrupled in price over the last 5 years. But the original situation started probably in the very early 2000s, where we started to see very low interest rates that we hadn't seen in years. A good mortgage rate when I was in the business was 14%, right? So and now it's what, 2.5%. So that makes you willing to buy more house, maybe than what you need. So that's what was pressing on in 2005, 6, and 7 until it started to break apart in the latter part of 2006. So that is always a stress. But right now, it's different factors that are doing. They could build any house you wanted to back then, and they did, and they would take any if the banks would sign off on it. And what they were doing, though, I mean, nothing wrong with this, but the banks, as soon as they signed off, then sold it to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or whatever who was ever doing it at that point, and wiped their hands clean. So those kind of situations still exist, but the problem now is a shortage of housing just in general, and the prices are such that it's difficult for younger people to even get in the market. So but it won't be the same thing. I guess that's what I'm saying.
But one of the challenges we have, if I may add that, where we don't have choices for seniors that might feel not comfortable living independently. And so like in Sussex County, you have cheer apartments, there's maybe one other, they're always long waiting lists. So those that may want to sell or leave their homes, in some cases are moving back to families where they originated from, but we just have a lack of that, where you would think that they would be moving into a different type of transitional senior living. It's not available. And unfortunately, you can't entice the builders to build that because they're making more money on the other kind of, development that's going on.
I might just say one thing on that we follow things. So if two people, a retiree and spouse move in here where they're 65 or so, there over the period from 65 to say 85, there's a good possibility that one of the two spouses is going to die. And since this is in many cases, what that means is that the person that's left leaves and goes back to wherever the family was, so that they have some sort of support and in some instances. So that's a factor when you have a largely older population moving in here. That's not true for all of them, but it's a significant portion will occur over that kind of period of time.
Representative Griffith, do you have any other questions?
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
Amy, I saw you unmuted. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wondered, I think, oops.
You're there.
One of the things that is difficult for us is, and I'm sure I know from a legislative perspective, you guys spend a lot of time on it, but something that did happen from the pandemic was one, burnout from caregivers, which I think people discussed. And it was, oh my, I'm at home all day with my loved one, and it's a lot more work than I can do. And then, oh my, I now have to go back to school, go to work, and what am I going to do? But one of the biggest concerns, because Sussex is going to be the area where most of the elderly are populating, healthcare providers are short now, and it does concern me significantly. We've seen it's hard to hire people right now, and I think a lot of that's post-pandemic, but I really think as a state, we need the healthcare and medical providers anyway, but when you really expand your population to the elderly, from my vantage point, to keep them aging in place, you're going to need much more robust options than I think we have.
Any other questions for Ed? Okay. Well, thank you, Ed. I appreciate you're certainly welcome to hang with us. I look forward to sort of seeing that data. I mean, again, in projections, distribution by county, because I think, I certainly, like I said, recognize the migration that you're seeing, into Sussex. Again, I'm operating anecdotally from what I'm seeing in my little corner in Newcastle County, and seeing when I take my mother to the doctors, who's in the waiting room, and all. So, I mean, I think I would really be interested to see, if we're seeing something similar, or what type of growth rates and the volumes, if there's a way by county, because I think that's gonna be informative, because I think it's gonna really sort of help us in our work, going ahead. And I see Jean has a question. She raised it.
Thank you. For Ed, if you're able to provide additional information too, like within that healthcare workforce, that orange line that we saw with, so much of the working population in that group, is there a way to break that down? Like, who are they, what those roles are? Obviously there's millions of roles within it, but a general high level, what they are. Because we've touched on pipeline when we were, talking earlier, and Ed, you made a good point. We need to start talking to children from 6th grade up and encouraging them. So I just kind of wondered what the mix has been in that orange line. And, that can help us a little bit, to pinpoint, we all think, well, there's a nurse shortage, but there's an aide shortage and there's a physician shortage. So, where are we going to go with a focus on pipeline too? So if that information is available with a little more detail, that would be great too.
I'll take a look for that. I don't think that there's, I think that there's a breakdown in that. It's not business related, it's occupational related, I think. And whether or not whether you can break that down lower than the state level is I don't recall, but I will take a look. No, there's no problem with that. If you come up with questions just in general on those topics while you're talking among yourselves, write it down and just send me a note, and I'll see whether or not there's something that's there that we can do without an enormous amount of time or effort or whatever. And I don't need to come back on here and browbeat you with the data. I'll send it to you. Be happy to.
Well, we enjoy, Ed, you're very informed. It's very informative and educational when you are with us. So, but I do want to remind everyone, William, whom he is supporting us. If we do have topics like that or research or questions like that for data, we can always go through William. He will be able to look for it and see if we can be able to provide it. So that's also another source too, either between him and Ed. So great. Anybody else have any questions for Ed? Okay, well, Ed, again, thank you so much. That was incredibly informative, and I think it really helps set the stage for for our work and sort of give us the lay of the land and what we should be thinking about. And yes, it's slightly not the best news, but I think it also it's reality, and that's what we need to be focused on. What is really happening out there, and how can we start to prepare for it so we can avoid any crises, before anything becomes a crisis. So thank you.
Happy to be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you, Will. You all should have received a memo, sort of a background memo from William, kind of discussing some different things, and really and Ed was very helpful in putting a definition of aging in place. And I think it's really important that we, as a group, are speaking the common language, speaking the same language here when we're talking about aging in place. And I'd like to spend some time just to focus on how we want to define it. So, because I think from there we'll be able to build and work towards some policies and recommendations that are going to be that we'll be able to implement. So, again, I just want to make sure everybody did receive a copy of that, correct? Okay. So William did a nice job bringing some different perspectives to a definition of aging in place. And really, there are three categories of it: place related, services based, and control. And the table that he has in there sort of identifies and frames the different objectives. One of the things that, in terms of defining that was in the memo was to focus on the services. And I guess I just want to have a little bit of an open discussion and get everyone's input of, from on this, so we can move forward in a common definition. So hoping for some for some feedback here.
I'll jump in. This is Melissa. My eyes went right to the second bullet. And what that question brought up to me is the concept of person-centeredness. And so I would lobby for part of the definition to include the preferences of the individual, and so kind of reflective of the community. And so I think the place that the individual wants to age should in large part be up to that individual and their definition of what that means.
Okay.
Totally agree. This is Amy. Totally agree. It's not necessarily the house that they have been in as an adult, but in the community, it defined, family, friends, and a number of other things.
Yeah, Representative Griffith, saw your hand up.
I agree on that person-centered approach. But I do think that we need to be cognizant of what our focus is, and that it's not, it's aging in place by the individual's desire, not necessarily where they end up. So I don't want to have a blanket, it's wherever you are living, but again, to where that individual's where that individual chooses to be.
And I'd like to add a little bit of clarification too to this aging in place, because some of this seems to be not consistent with what's considered homebound. And in order to get some services or assessment through some things that are already there, you have to be considered homebound. And a person may need services for aging in place, but not defined as homebound. And so I think there's a disconnect there between the two, and that we need to be real sensitive to that.
That's a
Yeah.
really good
Homebound is very different than aging in place, can be.
And an example of that is for some of the meals programs, they want you to be considered homebound, where I might have a person that's aging in place and with some assistance in a properly prepared diabetic meal or heart safe meal or whatever, that they might need assistance doing that, but they're not totally homebound. And so that's where I think we have a little bit of disconnect in some of the discussion that to help them age in place, they might need some of that assistance, but not be considered homebound.
I would agree there, because I think there's, unfortunately, in some of it's, there's regulation and law and whatnot based on, patient or public safety, if you will, safety of the individual that's receiving a service. And then there's that because there have been problems in the past. And, so often, we see a restriction put on someone who could otherwise do a pretty good job. And I think, Rep Briggs King, that you hit the nail on the head in an analysis, a very simple one. Meals on Wheels, I need to be homebound, but why? And that may be because, the limits of a program, that you can't do this for everyone. But even homebound for receiving Medicare services pushes some individuals into hospice, before maybe they're ready. And, I think actually Medicaid has a very good concept of, when they step in and provide services, it's truly based on a deficit, whether it's ADL or something like that, versus whether I can get out of my house. If I can still get out of my house, we should all be celebrating that, right? And helping, with that aspect that might keep you from getting out of your house.
Right. For instance, maybe I can get out of my house, but I certainly can't carry the groceries into the house.
Yes.
I mean, these are the things that we need to consider. And, because it's saying, yes, maybe I can prepare my meals, but I can't do, unless I have delivery or food pantry coming to the house. So it's just to look at, the different aspects of that.
And this is Lisa, and I think you both raised something critically important that I think we need to focus on also as we move forward, is there's different sort of places to get services, and each of those places might, like Jean pointed out, have a different definition of how to obtain those services. And so, like Jean said, for Medicaid, we base that eligibility for that population on their ADL deficit, not on their ability to get in and out of their home, where others might. And so there's no true alignment across the continuum around how we define sort of the population. So I just think we need to be cognizant of that as we step through, what this looks like moving forward.
That's, I think, really important. I think that point on alignment, it might be something we want to make sure we're, we return to, and as we do our work. So make sure I'm making a note of that. Any other thoughts on that? Katie or Amy or Wendell?
I would just say, just kind of to echo what others have already said, I think it's just really important around just preparing the community to allow people to age in place. And that doesn't necessarily mean in their home. Like, I think for the population of people with Alzheimer's and dementia, around creating a dementia-friendly community. So having those sources of support, resources, those that are public awareness, aware of the needs of people with dementia within the community, so that they can remain in their community, and communities are dementia capable. So I think it just really has to do around with just preparing the community as a whole to allow people to remain, and really, again, that person-centered care remain where they want to be.
I would, if I may, if I'd like to just add that we're also, we don't want to miss the point of what I believe that we want to discuss, and that is the caregivers themselves. and how we can help the caregivers as we process through this. The services are most important, but also the caregivers themselves. AARP has been very active in the paid medical leave and family leave just to help offset some of the expenses that the caregivers have faced. And I think we're all pretty much, but just the presentation and the statistics scare the dickens out of me. So.
And along that line, if I may add, I think one of the things that perhaps we could do is encourage employers to offer long-term care coverage for their employees. Many years ago in 2000, when I was with a financial institution, we started offering that as a benefit, so that if there was a family member that was going to stay home and take care of their parent or whoever that needed that they would be able to receive half of what they would be paying the facility. And so, that was one of the things that many times wasn't considered the same as a deductible item. But if we look at things on the federal level that can make a difference and encourage people to go ahead, like we've done with health insurance and other health plans, flexible spending accounts, if we could include somehow long-term care coverage in that, above the tax, so it reduces the taxable income, maybe as an encouragement for people to go ahead and take out long-term care insurance when it's much less expensive at a young age for pennies on the dollar, and to be more forward thinking, not only about a 401k or retirement or whatever, but to be thinking about long-term care coverage and how we could put that in our toolbox.
Good point. Good point. I also want to add, we want to make sure too, as we look at aging in place, I think, depending on the community, and I'll just say, people's background and cultural experience, we need to be very sensitive to that, as everyone, is going to approach how they care for their elders, and we just want to make sure we're culturally competent and incorporate this as well. So, okay. So what I'm hearing is, obviously, person-centered, and again, a differentiation between aging in place and homebound is a very important concept that we need to incorporate in a definition, so we can that will help us move forward. Is that what I heard? Okay. And I'm going to presume William is taking copious notes as well as I am, and I think we can look to sort of focus on that second bullet point. Again, remaining in one's home, and more broadly, and all that. Senator Bonini.
Well, with that, thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize if this isn't the right time to mention it, but and I apologize, I've forgotten the gentleman's name from AARP. Thank you for bringing that up, because that was my point as well. And if this isn't the time to talk about it in terms of definitions or everything, but I think it critical, the supporting of the caregiver to me is just an absolute paramount, and including, helping train folks with the skills they need, helping on the financial side or whatever that is. And I'm not sure if that's a definitional thing and to bring it up now or to talk about it later, but I think helping the caregivers to be able to get this done is critical. And I do think, and I have some ideas, we'll get a ton about what the state government can do to help to do that. But thanks, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know if this was the time to bring that up.
Again, thank you for reminding me about caregivers. I think, again, aging in place is not only for the individual who is aging, it's also for whatever support network or caregiving network that they have around them, whether it be a caregiver, a spouse, a niece, a nephew, a friend, any of those things, I think needs to also be, part of a definition, and to help us sort of frame the work we're going to do, because again, we want to make sure that we don't forget about the caregiver and all of this. And so I think we can come up with something, again, that's focused on person-centered, not defined as homebound, incorporating the caregiver, just to give us sort of a mission statement moving forward. And I think we can, and again, with the goal of remaining in one's home, or more broadly, one's community. So if that's okay with everyone, we will wordsmith something up just so we can have a mission statement to kind of work from, and then we'll circulate it. And again, I also want to add culturally competent manner to this as well. Jean.
Yes, I was thinking too that we do need to tie in that workforce, right?
Sure.
That they, because without them, we can't do this, right? Okay,
Right.
so
Yeah.
you know that whether we're helping to create a pipeline or however we're doing it, or looking to families so that they can be paid members too, and whatever it would be.
Yeah, so that that is, kind of jumping ahead, I propose some subgroups, and workforce is certainly, not only the paid workforce, but also again the I'll call them the family members or the volunteers, making sure that they have, the support and education and training that if someone chooses to have a spouse or a child, be that caregiver, that there's a network out there that can help give them the support they need to perform those duties. So I just wanted to make sure, but yeah, I think we can probably make sure we have something in that definition that again references the caregiver, and again what they need to make sure that they're supported, and the workforce. So absolutely.
One last thing, this is Amy, that I wanted to say, and this might be, is that there's this balance between all these kind of aging in place programs the state already has, whether it's Medicaid, community-based waivers and all that. Is this going to be a definition that incorporates that, or just a much broader philosophical? Because then you start thinking, like, for instance, there's a level of ADL needs, support you need to be considered and approved for long-term care, custodial care, and then there's a long-term care threshold for if you're part of a PACE program that allows you to remain in the community, and it's a lower threshold. So this might be muddying it, and we might just be kind of doing, like you said, a mission statement. But is there a need to kind of look at all the programs that the state already has in place to define kind of how they're designating the acuity equaling access to aging in place, or that type of thing? It might not be that, but there's so many different factors that are kind of already out there that makes you eligible for certain things that are considered aging in place.
Yeah, my thought was sort of broad philosophical, and I think, but
Okay.
I mean, to the point of I think the fact that the idea of, is there alignment in the definition, I think, is that something we take a look at as a working group? And again, when we get into some of the subgroups that are proposed, is that something that one of the subgroups takes a hard look at, and comes up with some ideas or some recommendations? I mean, certainly, again, we want to make sure that the mission of this group is to just build on what we have and make sure that everything is working, ideally and aspirationally, everything is working in concert, and in a way that's accessible to people no matter where they are, in the, I'll just call it the aging in place spectrum, where whether they're a caregiver, whether they are the person that's going to be aging, or somebody who's starting to think about, hey, I'm 64, what's going to happen in the next 5 years, those sort of things. What is that entryway? So I mean, that's definitely something, what I'm just thinking about in terms of this definition is just to sort of give us a framework, because again, as I said in my remarks, elder care is a very broad topic, and I want to try to keep us, kind of keep us on track in this one particular area. So that was the idea of trying to come up with a definition, so at least we can all work within it, and not get tripped up on definitions perhaps later on down the road. But I'm also open for some feedback too. I mean, I'd love to hear folks who are in the field here too, that have experience, and if this is the right way to go, or if there's, again, something that we should take a look at earlier on. Okay. Well, we'll draft something up, I think, taking into account all this feedback, just to, again, try to keep us on track, and moving forward. So thank you on that. So kind of to Senator Benini's point and others, I did propose creating some subgroups that we can, do a little deeper dive, expand the network of those who are involved. I mean, I'm looking at the attendees. I think we had 12, 13 folks who are watching. I'm sure you all have folks in your network that can provide some guidance and some expertise in different areas. So I wanted to, as I had in the sent in the memo, there were 4 groups that we thought might be a good starting point to propose to start. One is, I'll just read them off and then they'll come up individually on screen. One is the social determinants of aging well. This is where we'll start to address racial disparities and health equity, 21st century caregiver workforce issues, promoting access to support services and combating social isolation, and financial and legal barriers to aging in place. I thought those might be 4 areas that we could focus on that, again, will allow a little bit more of a deep dive. It's sort of based on some other models of other working groups and consortiums that have been formed. Obviously, we are all, expected, hopefully, to provide input. You don't have to be on a subgroup, but, we're going to try to, get everybody into some areas just to do a little deeper dive, again, with the support of William and Taylor. So I guess just in general, does that seem to be like a good grouping or good topics for subgroups? Representative Griffith?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I think those are great subtopics, and I think that they provide enough, they're specific enough to give a mission to each group, but also broad enough to be able to find some innovation if need be. And I just thought I'd mention this for anyone listening. We have certain appointed members of this group, but the subgroups, if I'm understanding correctly, will also provide us an opportunity to invite those who aren't necessarily a member of the working group, but are very interested or active in any of these areas to give input and actually technical and support in terms of input, et cetera, and framework for our overall mission. So I think if anyone's listening and wondering, well, I'm not a member of the working group, but how might I participate and give input? I think, if not mistaken, these work groups are subgroups are a fantastic way to do that.
Absolutely. Again, there's a lot of expertise on this working group. I'm sure, again, that there's a lot of expertise within your networks. And again, it's an opportunity to start to look at a topic that I think we all agree on and needs to be examined and built up. So let's, William, why don't we go to so again, this would be, I'll just go through the topics, and again, just to make sure we're okay with everyone agrees on the objectives for each subgroup. This is the social determinants of aging well. Again, we're talking about existing services, any disparities, and trying to address them. I mean, does this seem to be, these objectives seem appropriate for this work group or subgroup? Okay, I'm going to presume silence is agreement. So very good. We'll move to the next one then. I think, obviously, a lot of folks are talking about workforce issues. And again, Ed certainly made it very clear what the demographics on workforce is going to look like. And I think, looking to get some additional information in terms of the roles that are in the pipeline, that's really going to be critical. And again, the role of family caregivers, making sure that that's part of this. So yes, Senator Benini.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you. But would this also include, like I'm very interested in policies to, incentivize higher ed, to meet critical needs and things of that nature. Would this be the subgroup that might look at some of those kind of things?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you're looking at, digging down a little bit. And again, it's in the memo you should have received, looking at reviewing the current state of the caregiver workforce. Some things that you can look at, identifying high growth positions in areas with critical vacancies, evaluating current educational and vocational training levels of the workforce, and consider programs available to prospective caregivers. Assess wages.
Okay.
You
And
know,
I apologize.
that would be the place.
Okay, perfect. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I do
No.
not have that memo in front of me. I'm on the phone. So
No.
I should have done my homework and had the memo in front of me. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. But no, I think, I think that is going to be a critical subgroup that, it's going to do some very important work, because again, it's not just the paid workforce that we're talking about. I think we need to take a very hard look at the support that's given and the role for family caregivers. And
I could not agree more. Could not agree.
I believe in, I don't have the data in front of me, but I think the if you look at the monetary value of the dollar value of family caregivers, it's really high. I mean, if it were to be paid. So I think we need to really be looking at that and making sure that if someone chooses to be a caregiver, or the family or the situation warrants it, they get the support training that they need. So that's definitely
couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Yep. Jean?
Yes, I'm just thinking, when this is an objective, and I feel like the second bullet point, consider these factors with respect to current demographic trends and determine if the workforce is sustainable. I feel like maybe it's to look for ways to sustain, or I guess the bullet point makes me think we're just going to figure out if it's sustainable.
No, Ed explained it pretty well. But I think
yeah. So really, but our objective would be to find a way to make things sustainable, or some wording of that, right?
Yeah. Noted. Okay. William will make a change. We'll edit that. Okay. Any other thoughts on this?
Would this be the appropriate time to volunteer to serve on one of these committees?
I'll talk about how we can do that at the end. Yeah.
So I would definitely be interested in the caregiver workforce, this particular, to serve on that, or with whoever.
Great. Okay. We'll make note of that. Okay, William, let's go to the next one. So again, I think, services in combating social isolation. I think, this is definitely something that we would need to take a look at. I think, it certainly is, as we saw in the pandemic, I think everybody was exceptionally isolated, but particularly our seniors and those aging. But I mean, that's been a problem, or that's been a situation prior to that. So again, this is looking at this and seeing what we can do. Jean, your hand's up. Is it for? Oh, just checking. Okay, just trying to be. Just want to be responsive. Okay. And then finally, the fourth one, William. And again, financial and legal barriers for aging in place. So I think there are a number of things that, again, we want to be, be aware of, and make sure that, and then maybe this is, again, to the point, to the topic that we were talking about, definitions amongst different programs. Is this might be a place where we could, both in the state and in the private nonprofit sector, take a look at and see where there might be some opportunities. So I'm going to start with Representative Griffith. There.
Thank you. I'm particularly interested in this one, given my background. I think, and I should have raised this sooner, I think that what this subgroup also will discuss is the real sad aspect of aging in place when seniors are dealing with financial exploitation or neglect by caregivers. So that I think, if not mistaken, Senator, we're going to be covering that in that as well. And just for the group's just for the group, I served for many years as director of this of Bill Biden's Senior Protection Initiative when I was a Deputy Attorney General at the Department of Justice. So I'm going to reach back a little bit to that experience to hopefully contribute to this subgroup, because I do know that that is, when we're talking about caregivers teetering, sometimes they teeter in a negative direction and wind up exploiting their loved one for a variety of reasons. So anyway, I think that will fall nicely into place with this topic.
Okay, thank you. Jean?
Yes, Rep. Griffith, I was actually on that senior protection team too with Marsha White. So I know, I feel like a lot of good work was done with that, but maybe the awareness could be raised again, right? In here, the one thing I think maybe a bullet point we really need to look at is regulation. For all the programs that are out there, there's licensure, and that licensure will have a regulation. And sometimes, no matter how absurd it seems, to a family or a patient, your hands are tied because, a regulation has been put in place because something bad has happened. But it doesn't always serve the best purpose. So we should look or consider, are there regulations, within any program or laws that are impeding this aging in place? So,
Gotcha. That would probably be that second bullet point. Yeah.
Okay. Determine the
existing programs. And
oh, okay. I guess I would have thought that was a program for providing care, but I got you. Okay. Good.
Yeah, but we could definitely include that as part of it too. I mean, whether it's again in a state program or even wherever those programs are. But yeah, I mean, regulations are definitely and licensure.
Yeah. So maybe within that bullet, including regulation, review of regulation.
Okay. Okay. Well, make sure you add that. Representative Ruth Briggs-Haynes.
Thank you. I just wanted to add in here how many times I hear from families that they don't know they have a problem until it's too late to do anything about it, where their senior family member has been exploited, sometimes by a caregiver, sometimes by someone else. And one of the challenges we have is that that person today, when interviewed by a physician, may seem competent, but somebody that's been with them for the last 10 years, there's nowhere they're near the same status of understanding or whatever, that they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, yet they still range for a legal definition, whatever, being competent to take care of their affairs. So a caregiver or someone that's being helpful to the family takes them in and changes accounts and information and other stuff. And then all of a sudden, the family is very late in realizing that there's this, the family, the loved one has been duped. And I don't know where we have that in this discussion, what we would need to do, because certainly there's definitions for what competency is, but maybe really look at that and see, is there a grade of where you deteriorate from one point to the other point? You may still be competent. Krista, this is where I come back to you, but maybe you're not capable. I know these are really sensitive areas and I've dealt with them myself, but it's just, I hear so many horror stories from family members in my area that realize these things have occurred, and it places not only a financial hardship on that aging person, but then another tremendous emotional thing as well. So just not sure where that fits in. And maybe it's just a conversation where we offer advisements or something else to family members to be alert for those kind of things, which I know that you try over and over again. I just still think that it's becoming more increasing rather than, unfortunately, less of an issue.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And, it's very sad because you could have a parent who gives gifts to their loved one in amounts to help them out when they're at X age, and then they deteriorate, and that caregiver, that younger person knows they're going to give that gift, and they will still seek to get that money, even though the individual has deteriorated. And, it's very difficult to prosecute those cases. They are the worst to prosecute. They're very difficult. Prosecuted a number of cases where, I remember one farmer in Middletown, and within period of 3 years, a caretaker had bilked him of over $200,000 in increments of $1,000 or less. So, it's, and those are the lower amounts that aren't easy to catch, when you're dealing with $500 charges versus $5,000 charges, but sure enough, the poor gentleman was, his whole life savings wiped out because of a very bad caretaker, non-family, but nonetheless caretaker. So I think that has to be a critical piece of this subgroup, because and there are, luckily we have in Delaware that continuation of the Senior Protection Initiative. We have a number of attorneys who I imagine will be very interested in also providing some assistance.
Do we have someone representing or represented from Adult Protective Services? Simply because what you're talking about now is exactly what AARP has been doing for the last 3 years, a very aggressive campaign on trying to prevent the typical things we hear over the phone, and then the abuse and seniors giving up thinking that they're being fraud, or they are being frauded actually. But how does this tie into this? Because I think they go hand in hand.
Right. No, I would envision APS would be very active in this discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Hi, this is Melissa Smith with DSAPID, and Adult Protective Services is on our division. So I would make sure that we would have representatives present as well.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. That's okay. Okay. So I think we can make sure we'll add that as a component of this as well. So what will happen next is we will have a Google form that's been created that you can express your interest in which subgroup you would like to work on, and again share with we'll make that publicly available too. So I mean, again, if there's folks that are in your network or folks who are watching and wish to be a part of it, they can join the subgroup, and we can be able to sort of spread out and be able to draw upon a wider network, again, a larger network here to come up with some ideas. So again, that's going to be something you'll be getting from William, and we look to do that. We'll have a chair of each subgroup, and then we can look to have those subgroups meet, independent of our group meeting. Any other, does that sound good for everybody? Like I said, we are still anticipating, I'm going to say, we are anticipating, 4 or 5 more participants once the governor's office appoints them. They actually include somebody who's representing caregivers, somebody who is a caregiver. We're actually, waiting for an appointment by the governor for somebody who is a senior who is aging. And Taylor, remind me the other two. I don't have it in front of me.
Representative of a federally qualified health center, an adult service provider.
How about possibly somebody from housing, senior housing, or transportation, or is that too detailed?
I think we can certainly reach out. I mean, again, we can, if we identify somebody, we can make the request to have them participate on these. But again, we can we can reach out. Again, the idea of the subgroups is to, again, try to expand and bring again, different perspectives and different expertise on. So I mean, if you think that there's an opportunity, we can certainly make that request. So okay, so that's how we will go going forward with the subgroups. We are at 2:51, so I'd like to give the opportunity for anyone who is watching, who's not part of the working group, if they have any comments or anything, please do the raise hand function. And William, let me just go there myself. Let me see. So I see we have Cheryl Hikes. So if we can activate Cheryl. Okay, Cheryl, you've been elevated.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you very much for pulling this group together. I think it's a very exciting piece of the puzzle for care for our seniors. And I am the executive director of the Delaware Healthcare Facilities Association, which is the nonprofit trade association that has represented the long-term care industry in Delaware since 1968. We're hoping to be able to be included in the working group, since for many of our seniors that live in our buildings, assisted livings, independent livings situations, especially that, and to a certain degree, in many cases in the long-term care setting, that is their home. I mean, they have made a decision that becomes their home. They may go back and forth and live with families from time to time, but that is their physical home. So for them, they're aging in the place which they have chosen. So I wanted to at least advocate for our industry being represented the same way that home health and hospitals are. We're all part of the same continuum of care, and our residents, our Delawareans, go back and forth between all three settings very, on a regular basis. I also, as somebody who had been a caretaker for my mom until her passing in early January of 2020, everything that you've said today struck home with me personally. So again, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Cheryl. We'll be in touch. Anybody else wish that's like to offer any comments that are okay? I don't see any more for public comment. So so we are, as the resolution had stated, we are expected to issue a report at the end of March of 2022 with any recommendations. I mean, the idea being that would give us the General Assembly time to work any legislation that does come out of the working group. I'd like to propose at least if we can start maybe meeting every other week to start, like, so again via Zoom, and hope maybe look to have some of the subgroups convening in the weeks that we're not meeting. And again, the subgroups will have support from William and others on my staff, so we can sort of get that, keep moving, because we are now, gosh, October's next week, holy cow. And then to be honest, Thanksgiving is not that far away, and then the holidays, and then come January, we'll be, me and my legislative colleagues will be back in session. So, and then March. So, want to try to be, as timely as we can and move this process forward. So, if we could just say that, we can look to schedule the large working group meetings every other Friday for 2 hours. I mean, I get sometimes things are going to come up. We can't all make it. Not a problem. But I just want to kind of keep it moving, and then the subgroups can establish their own agendas and timing. Again, hopefully, probably off weeks or something, but just to get that going, keep everything moving forward. And then obviously, come the holidays, we probably won't be able to meet. But as much as we can get done, hopefully, between now and before Thanksgiving, will position us well for us to reconvene in January. So that's what I would propose. And any other thoughts or comments before we adjourn for today?
Just thank you. I think that this was a really good set the stage foundational meeting for our work ahead. So thank you for a good meeting.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate everyone's participation. Senator Bonini?
Just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's important stuff, and we're not going to be able to get everything done that everybody wants to get done, but I think it's a great opportunity, and thank you for putting this together, and hopefully we'll make some real progress.
Well, thank you. And again, I think there's an opportunity here. Again, the folks that are serving on this working group, and again, the network that I know each and every one of you has, and the ability to kind of we'll have the ability to bring in more folks through these subgroups. I think we have an opportunity to make some real progress and really build and do right by our aging community and their caregivers. So I thank you for that. You will be seeing some additional information coming from William. Please don't hesitate to respond to him, ask him questions. If you when you get the request for what subgroup you want to work on, please fill that out and get it back to him. I'd like to hopefully have an equal number. I know we all have different interests. And William, remind me, I think we are asking if people have a second choice in that form.
Yeah, so the way the form will work is all the subgroups will be listed, and you will rank them in your preference, first choice to last choice, and we will do our very best to make sure that everybody gets something they're at least somewhat interested in.
Again, we just want to try to make sure we don't want to have everybody on workforce and like nobody on legal or something, or it be out of balance. So that's going to be the goal. And again, I realize, maybe there won't be a subgroup meeting next week because we're starting to ramp up and all this, but we will look to have our next meeting 2 weeks from today. I plan to invite Melissa. Please help me make sure I get the name right. We will be getting a presentation from Advancing States. And Melissa, if you could just give a 15-second blurb about what they are.
Sure, absolutely. And you got the name right. Advancing States is our national membership organization for state units on aging and disabilities like DISAPID. And they are willing to bring to the table best practices and expertise that they have gathered from around the country and in all of the subjects we've discussed today.
So that will be, and again, if there is a topic that you think we should have a presentation on, or additional data or research, please, like I said, send it to Will. William will kind of compile it, and we'll look to get that, have that part of an agenda going forward. Certainly want to make sure we are using this opportunity to bring in as much information and gain as much knowledge so we can, again, come up with some recommendations and policies that are going to benefit all Delawareans up and down the state. So again, don't hesitate to reach out. Any other thoughts or questions?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Cheryl Hikes mentioned, wanting to be included in this, the group today outside of the listening session. And I have to agree with her that it would be very beneficial. We work in tandem so often, and she's absolutely right. My own mother was in assisted living for 7 years, and that was her home, and she was able to die there, and she was happy, so, and I work in home care.
No, I understand. No, absolutely. And I definitely will be reaching out to Cheryl. I think, as I was drafting this resolution, completely understand the role, looking at the continuum. I mean, and I was looking at a very particular, very narrow part of it. And again, it's not meant to slight that part of the continuum. I think it's just meant to really focus on an area where, in my personal experience and the experience and the stories I've heard from a lot of folks, there seems to be, how shall I put this? A lot of, when I talk to a lot of smart people, like the ones that are on this on this working group, people seem flummoxed when they've reached that point, with a parent, whether it and it's before that period where the type of where there might be a facility involved, and that seemed to be the one area where again, in my personal experience and again in the conversations I've had with many other folks, that just seemed to be where the gears grinded for a lot of people. And that's kind of where my thought was. And again, it was not meant to not consider any other part of the continuum, but it just really into that area where I think it's most people's first exposure to dealing with someone who's aging.
And you
So
don't
that was my thinking.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know until it's over. Right. Then you're maybe an expert and not in time. So, but Senator, thank you very, very much for pulling us together. And I don't think anyone would feel slighted.
Right. But just, I mean, I guess just to make sure it's clear on what the intent was. I mean, again, there's absolutely, the role for those, those facilities in there. This is just that part where, again, making sure that people have the information, the networks are there. Those are the points in time that, if, again, I'm speaking for myself, where if we're talking about a post-pandemic economy where we are looking to help people get back to work, we talked a lot about, for example, childcare. Childcare is absolutely important, and the role of childcare in helping people get back, to work and be productive is critically important. Equally important in my mind is elder care, because if mom's got an appointment at 3 o'clock on Wednesday and you can't make it, get her there for whatever reason, you're not going, you won't get another appointment until December, or the stress that's involved with caring for a parent in some cases, in my mind, is greater than raising my kids. So that it's that phase of time that I was trying to focus on in creating this working group, and certainly making, again, it's part of a continuum, and making sure that that continuum is whole is definitely important, and how it fits into, again, this particular segment of time just prior to that. That's my thinking. And again, I'll be talking with Cheryl and see how we can make sure that she is involved appropriately.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Representative Griffith, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry, I wasn't sure.
No, I was just saying that that's why we have the working groups also, is to be able to get that input from valuable members of our community, and it does, again, this group can, this topic we could work for years on, and certainly there may be that time for that other, but I do think it's important to keep our focus on some aspects of this, and utilize those other members of the community who are certainly important to this discussion in our working groups, because we're going to need to, it's going to get tiresome for all of us on this group to handle everything. So we're going to need that support in those working groups. I think sometimes they can be even more important than the group of the smaller body.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's 3:04. I think we are. We'd like to be respectful of everyone's time, especially on a Friday, and especially on a day where it's a little bit of fall is in the air. So I don't want to keep us too much longer. So again, thank you very much again for being part of this. I appreciate everyone's participation, their input, and look forward to reconvening with you all in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
You too. Take care.